Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in again. Today I want to talk about what was one of the most well-kept secrets that I can recall in a long time regarding a bait in the fishing industry. Guys, this bait was out for quite some time, but it didn't sell all that great. But there was a select group of anglers that were absolutely tearing up the fish on this bait. But because the bait wasn't out in the mainstream, it ended up getting discontinued. And it was discontinued probably for, I'm going to guess about 2 years, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. But what happened during that time was the demand from the anglers that were using the bait created an aftermarket or a secondary market price of $100 to $150 per pack of plastic. And they come in packs of 8, so you're looking at $15 to $20 per bait. And because there was such a good demand for the secondary market, they ended up starting to make this bait again. And when they came back out with this, it took off well and it became much more of a mainstream bait. But having said that, it's still very much a well-kept secret. It's a bait that a lot of people won't use, and it's a bait that people look at and kind of laugh at. And what I'm talking about is the little Kitech spider grub. Guys, this thing comes in a 2-inch and a 3-inch size. So here's the 3-inch size, here's the 2-inch size. Just, I mean, tiny little bait. Here's a quarter just to compare it to. I mean, we're talking what most people would consider as a panfish bait. There's crappie baits that are bigger than that. But this bait just absolutely dominates the bass. Like when you're talking about tough conditions or extremely pressured bodies of water, this little bait really can excel. I've talked about how good the hula grub is. A spider grub is a bait that I absolutely love, and it's already a very finesse bait. But when you downsize to a little bait like this, you're talking about giving the fish a look at a spider grub that they don't ever see. I don't know how many of you have ever seen like a crawfish hatch, but when you find a small crayfish hatch where there'll be hundreds of these little tiny little 1-inch crayfish, you cannot find much better to match that than this. And that's kind of where, at least in my part of the country, this bait took off. Here in the month of June, a lot of times you'll have a good crayfish hatch where you've got a bunch of 1/2-inch to 1.5-inch crayfish. And when that happens, the fishing gets really tough because there are so many of these that the fish are out feeding on, that it just becomes tough to fish. And for a long time, I had trouble trying to get that bite to happen, meaning I had trouble trying to catch fish during that time period because the fish were so keyed in on these little crayfish. And I knew they were for a couple of reasons. One, I had actually seen them off of my dock feeding on these little crayfish because, you spend enough time in the water with your kids or just in the water, you see them all. I mean, it would be nothing. We could take like a butterfly net and scoop down along the gravel on the bottom, and you'd get 3 or 4 of these, and you would see the bluegill and you'd see the bass feeding on these little crayfish. Well, that was kind of where I started throwing this, and I saw how good this bait could be. Now, I was not aware of the bait prior to the secondary market. I became aware of it when I saw how much they were going for in the secondary market. I mean, when you've got a pack of 8 of these selling for $100+, you're talking about serious money being spent on a bait that, doesn't necessarily hold up because it's a plastic bait. It's not a hard bait. But when that happened, I was like, I got to try these. Well, when I didn't buy one on the secondary market, even though I was tempted to. But when they came back out with it, they had like a pre-order. So I ordered a whole bunch of them. And when I got them, I was like, well, now I don't even know exactly where and when to use these. But I can tell you, when you've got small crayfish, it's an absolute killer thing. The couple of the other scenarios where it's really excelled for me is fishing in the springtime. If you've got bedfish, it's hard for them to deny this little guy. If you've got sight fish, I'm not talking bedding fish, I'm talking about if you see fish cruising the shallows and they're not showing much interest in your other baits, they will show interest in this little guy. So, you got to get it out in front of them, but which can be the hard part because it is a very light bait. But it excels during that time. For smallmouth, if you've got smallmouth that are running shallow flats where you've got nice rock, gravel, sand transitions, it's another killer bait. It's just such a small, non-intimidating bait that the fish don't ever see, that it really is something that I think you want to try. The couple of other things I want to point out when you're using it, because it's such a small bait, it's actually hard to find hooks that fit it. For me, I've got two that I like, two hooks that I really like to throw. One on the 3-inch size, I like to throw the half head, the Berkeley half head. And then in the 2-inch size, I'll throw the Brush Easy, which is made by Hayabusa. And in both instances, I'm throwing extremely light heads. So on the 2-inch, this is a 1/13 ounce. On the half head, these are 1/16 ounce. So you're talking about extremely small baits. So for me, I like to throw it on spinning gear. I'm sure there's some out there that would throw it on a bait finesse system, but I'm a spinning gear guy. I like to throw it on a 10-pound X9, Berkeley X9 braided mainline to a 6-pound Berkeley 100% fluorocarbon leader line. And I'm throwing it on a long rod. I'm throwing it on an MHX SJ9000 rod, which is a 7.5-foot, like basically a 1-power rod. So it's an extremely long rod that allows me to make really long casts by loading up this small bait. And with the X9 braid to a leader, you can throw it pretty good, but you got to recognize the fact that you're still throwing something that's about a 1/16 of an ounce. It's not a very heavy bait. So that's one of the biggest obstacles you run into. A couple other keys with that is if you position yourself downwind, you can use the wind to help you throw it. And if you're fishing current situations, and I've had some fantastic situations where I'm fishing current with this bait, you can let the current actually take the bait away from you because it is such a light bait. So if you have a strong enough current, you can use the current to your advantage as well. But those are the situations where I really like to throw this little spider grub. It just seems like it's a bait that, the fish haven't seen before. And because it's such a lifelike little crayfish style bait, that they will eat it. I mean, it's something that we see all over the country. I mean, this has gotten a lot of praise out west. It's gotten a lot of praise down south on some of the spotted bass lakes and the super clear bodies of water. And I can tell you, up here in the North Country and on the Great Lakes, it's an absolute killer little bait. And it's still one that does not get a lot of talk about, but the people using it are diehards. I mean, it's something that guys are catching a pile of fish on. And the nice thing about it is it's also a bait that just generates a lot of bites. So if you are fishing with like young kids or people that are new to the sport, you will catch a lot of like 8-inch bass on it as well. I've catch bluegills on it, I catch perch on it. So it's a bait that does just generate a lot of strikes. Now the negative side of that is if you're fishing around too many bluegill, they do tend to grab your tails and pull your tails off, which can be kind of a pain in the butt. But now that you can get these on the market, or you've been able to get them probably for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, it's not really a big issue anymore because you're not paying $10 to $20 per bait. But it's such a small bait that you're not deterring other fish from eating it as well. But guys, I personally think you should have some of these. It's a bait worth trying, especially if you are fishing a lot of clear water places. I don't ever really throw this in dirty water situations, but if I'm on clear water lakes, it's a bait that I have rigged up all the time at this point. I'm very, very much a fan of it, and it's a good way to give the fish something different to look at. So check them out. It's the Kitech Little Spider. They've got the 3-inch and 2-inch size. It's probably a heck of a crappie bait too. I don't really ever fish for crappie, but I'm sure the crappie guys are catching them on it as well. Otherwise, stay tuned for tomorrow's video. We'll have another one coming out. If you like today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and thanks for watching.